Okay, I'm gonna where's the glass that I tink on?
All right,
Tink, tink, tink.
everyone take a seat, please.
Tink, tink, tink. First of all, if we haven't met, I'm Greg Pinneo, and somehow, some way, man, and I tell you, wow, don't ask me to try to figure it out, but I have been blessed in my life for so many years. Like, you guys, I'm not joking you, for like 44 years, I've been in front of people talking about real estate acquisition, finance, and life. And for an introvert, that's crazy. It's a bad joke. It's God's bad joke on me. But the blessing along the way is that I have been able to connect with the most extraordinary people on this planet. And when I say connect, it isn't faces in a big group. It's I get to know them one-on-one and really dive into their lives and they into mine. And we work hard to get things done. You know, we really work hard. But along that path, there's those who are serious about it, and then there are those who are just drop dead serious about it. And the drop dead serious ones are the ones I get to work with one-on-one. And in that vein, boy, we really work hard. We live and die with this intensity of really trying to make a mark. We've identified sustainable motivation. We know why we're doing what we're doing, and let's go get it done. Let's do it. 4 years ago, she will tell you she was a school teacher. And today she's in this country. She is truly one of the going places, young real estate entrepreneurs that gets it and is stirring it up left and right. And for that statement to come out of my mouth, you name a city, and I'll tell you who's stirring it up in that city. I've been to every city in this country. I've got great students in every city in this country. But then they would boil down to a handful of those who truly are stirring it up daily, consistently, who breathe entrepreneurship. And that's my best introduction to Miss Alexandra Haider. This is her hangar. Her plane's going to be in here in about a week. She's just really making a mark, but doing it with the kind of ethics, the kind of sensitivity, the kind of awareness that is rarely seen. So I want you to start this evening listening to her story and where she's gone, and then I'll come back and we'll talk some real estate acquisition and finance. Alexandra, take it from there. Okay?
Thank you. All right, so thanks, Greg. Greg is currently my real estate coach, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but I'm going to start from the beginning. So yes, 2018, I was still a high school English teacher. Was not loving it, but I went and got my master's in education. I was committed to it, but really I was struggling because I was not making nearly the money that I wanted to make for the lifestyle that I wanted to live. And so growing up, my parents actually owned student rentals, and I grew up working with them, and just really during a week when there is turnover. But I grew up understanding that having these investments and having passive income could greatly assist whatever it was that I chose to do. And so I went into teaching, and as a teacher, I was like, I really need to get some investment properties. And my intention was to house hack. So I wanted to buy anywhere from a 2 to 4 unit property, and I wanted to live in one unit, and then I wanted to rent out the rest of them. And so I went with my realtor and looked at every single crap hole in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and it was like rough because we were offering on these awful properties, and we'd be one of like 20 offers. And I am not kidding, I probably offered 20 times and we never got a single one accepted. In this period of time of working with this realtor, he and I became pretty good friends because we were working together for so long. And one day he was like, hey, can I talk with you after we probably had another non-accepted offer? And he was like, I really think you should do real estate. And he's like, I know you were like set on teaching, but I think you'd be a really good agent. And you know, he knew I knew a little bit about fixing things up and that sort of thing. And so we made this decision that I would work part-time as a real estate agent and that I would also still be a teacher. And he could answer my phones during the day, and then I could be a real estate agent in the evening and on the weekends. And that was fine because as a teacher, I was already still coaching and working at a restaurant and doing all these other things to supplement my income. So I was like, well, I might as well do this second job instead of those and see. So that summer, I just did summer school. And so summer school was half days. And during that period of time, I became a real estate agent. And during the first couple of months, I realized there's just no way I want to go back to teaching. And so I quit teaching completely and became a full-time real estate agent. And I was still looking for my first investment property. It suddenly became that I was no longer financeable either. So now I can't even get an FHA or Fannie Mae loan because I don't have a W-2 income anymore. And so my brother, who's the bearded mountain man back there, he's a hero. No, he was already doing real estate. And so he dropped out of college freshman year. He was doing real estate and he had started moving to bigger projects than tiny little homes. And meanwhile, I'm like trying to get like seller financing or with my little cash trying to get something. Really, there was nothing for me at this time. I was trying to find some sort of in. So my brother found this little house in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, and I ended up buying that. It was in a little unincorporated village called Hillsdale. And so I bought the house for $16,000 cash, which was $8,000 from US Bank, and then some money from me. I think you guys borrowed me like $2,000. And then basically worked there on the weekends and sometimes during the week when I wasn't being a real estate agent. And you know, Mike would come and help me, and I think you guys came a few times, but there was a lot of times where I was there by myself, and there was no cell phone service here either. So I was like, I couldn't even YouTube how to do things. It was pretty rough. So I like bled all over the house and cried on the floors, and it was like, this is the dream. And like did everything wrong in the house. Like seriously, and then I'd do it wrong and I'd look at it and I'd be like, that looks so bad, I have to redo it. I just don't want to. Like, so anyways, powered through that. Oh, and also meanwhile, the only way that this city was on the radar was because someone just got kidnapped from there. So this unincorporated village had like this girl who got kidnapped and her family got killed, and that's how people like knew where this house was. So I did not want to even be there by myself at this point because the guy wasn't found. It was still like, what's going on here? So anyways, oh, one more quick thing. And across the street was the meth head neighbor who literally would be out in the rain swinging on the swings, running around, playing basketball by himself, like. And I was like, what is this? Is like, I left my career, so I'm gonna stick with this, but like, what is happening? And meanwhile, clients can't call me because I don't have service. So finished that house, sold it on a contract for deed, which I thought was super creative financing at the time, like really cool. I was able to do that. My brother taught me, you know, the extent of his creative financing knowledge at the time. And so sold it to somebody for $70,000. Probably had a total of 18 into it because I did every single thing myself and everything was from like garage sales and stuff. So I was very excited. This was a huge deal for me at the time. After fixing this house up, I was looking for more and actually started looking with clients, and some of the houses were done by people who would go in and they'd fix up houses. And so I left a review asking how they did something in a house to one of these companies, and they actually called me in for an interview, and they're like, oh, we can see you're really passionate about home renovations. We want to have you interview here. So I interviewed. Immediately I knew it was kind of like a red flag type job because the boss first thing was like, I'm a hothead and like I'm gonna yell at you and you're just gonna have to deal with it and like all this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I'll learn a lot here and then I'll leave. Well, while working there, I realized that he was like suing everyone and it was just like super kind of scary. So I wanted to leave, but he was flipping houses. And so one house we were walking through, there wasn't enough spread there for him to flip it himself with his company. And so I was like, well, would you sell this house on a contract for deed? And he was like, well, yeah, I would sign on contract for deed. I was like, would you take $16,000 down? Because that was 10% of what we were thinking it was worth as is. He's like, yeah, sure. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I bought that house. That was my next house. I bought it from him on a contract for deed. Meanwhile, now I'm in a contract for deed with somebody who doesn't want me to quit the job and he had multiple times mentioned to me he could put a lien on my house for any reason and stuff like this. So I was like, oh, it's kind of scary. I want to get out of this. But I have this house, and Mike and I worked on it, and we got it looking really nice, and we lived in it for a while. It was a cat pee house. It was disgusting. I cried in there also. We had one really big argument because I wanted to have the pee off of the floor. I wanted to rip out the floors and not have to like put my shoes on and like walk over the cat pee and poop. And he wanted running water. And so we were like, and like, I mean, who needs running water when you're walking over pee? And we were like really at odds with that. So we ended up getting both eventually. So luxurious. But this was what it was for me when I was starting out. This was literally like, it was rough and it sucked and it was like disgusting, and I got like the worst of the worst because nobody wanted, like no one was coming up to me being like, do you want to buy this house? It was nothing like that. So we were doing house flips like that. Met one of Greg's former coaching students, Rafik Moore, and I started working with him, and I started working as his residential agent with all of his people who were doing house flips. And then he was like, do you want to like partner on something? We can do multifamily. It's like, oh yeah, like I would love to partner with you. So we each put half down. I did all of the work, but he got me qualified for financing, and suddenly I was financeable. So then we started really going. So we were buying 4plexes, 6plexes, 16 units, 30 units, 35, 40, and started really just growing my portfolio in a short period of time because I could do it. I just had to be financeable, and with someone with a really big portfolio, suddenly I was. And so that was really great, and it started moving really quickly, and I was working like crazy, and started buying lots of multifamily. Rafik recommends for me to go to Power Players, which is Greg's event, and when I go there, I was just like completely mind blown with the ways that you can creatively deal structure and how you can finance things that way. And so that shifted my perspective a lot because I literally thought contract for deed was all that there was. And then I learned that there was so much more that you can do and so many other ways that you can get good financing. And I mean, I learned things that when I left there, I was just like, I think I called Mike. I called you. I know for sure. Where's Jay Larson? Do you remember me calling you? You called me about something. I missed a call. And then I was like just going on and on about everything I learned. And you're like, I could tell you're very excited. Like, do you want to answer my big question now? Like, it was, so that was really exciting. And all of a sudden I was like, God, I could do so much here. So I started buying mixed-use properties, and on the bottom of mixed-use are commercial tenants. So I probably at this point am up to maybe like 200 doors of residential. My brother and I, my first commercial building, my brother and I actually bought together from this bank, Prime Security Bank. They had foreclosed on somebody, and basically they had the bank back. Jay was dealing with a lot of it and did not want to be. And I was like, well, this could be a good opportunity. So we ended up having the bank hold a second position note, the bank that had foreclosed on it, and then we got another first position note from another bank, and we put 5% down. And then that was my first commercial building. So there was commercial on the first floor. It was like a warehouse, and then like thrift stores basically. And we ended up getting new tenants in there. But it was a good experience doing commercial because when I first bought it, I was like, oh, I love residential, I know residential, but I'm scared of the commercial. And then I realized that the commercial actually was business owners, and I really liked working with business owners because they had really high goals and they wanted their business to succeed. And in order for their business to succeed, they had to pay their rent. So it was a really different, even though they were really small little mom and pop commercial tenants in Hinckley, they were a different client base, and I liked that. And so I started buying more mixed-use buildings, and I found that I really liked the commercial tenants. So I got like Anytime Fitness, H&R Block, a lot of, just like more tertiary market, but some national tenants and some mom and pops, but it didn't matter. They were still a very different tenant base than what I was used to in residential. And by this point, I was self-managing so many doors that I was burnt out with residential. I could literally write a book on the weird tenants, and the weird things that have happened, and like the emergencies that I left dinners for, and it was not an emergency. And I was doing too much myself, and then trying to find residential property management companies. And I found that I had to fire a lot of them. And then when you get these properties back, it's a lot worse than you ever had it, than it was when you had it. So then you're getting something back that's even a bigger mess than it was before. So because I liked these commercial units so much, that's when I kind of switched my trajectory and started buying strip malls. So our first one was in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I love it. So we bought it, it was about 50% occupied, and within 6 months we had fully filled it, and we had refinanced out our private investors, and we were cash flowing like $30,000 a month, and it was awesome. And with that, I grew confidence, and this one was easy for me because it was in Eau Claire, and that's where I'm from, and my mom would drive by and be like, oh, I see your trash is overflowing, I put it in my truck. I'm like, Mom. But my mom is the real hero here, yeah. But you're not gonna have that everywhere else, you don't have Mom looking out for you. But she literally did that. So it was really nice though to see I can do this, because a year prior to that, there's no way I would have thought I would have bought a strip mall. That first one was 77,000 square feet, so a pretty decent size, and a really great experience. And I love working with commercial tenants. I love it. I don't know if everyone else loves it as much as I do, but meeting someone and being like, this is what I want to do. And I really love the startup tenants too, because they have these goals, and they're a lot of times when you put them in a unit, they're crying. They're so happy, and they do it, and you see them, and then they expand, and it's really rewarding and fulfilling in the way that I really wasn't finding it was for me in residential. And I think that's different for everyone, but that's my experience. So then I just kept doing that and bought a couple more strip malls, and I'm looking at 2 more on Friday. And so this is exciting, but the thing that's happening now is that with rates so high, suddenly a lot of these strip malls that I'm looking into are no longer financeable. And so I'm very happy that I have the tools to be able to do creative financing and take debt from another property and apply it to a strip mall and be able to have my down payment or have the majority of the purchase and not have to get a loan if I can't finance it at 7.5% or 8%. And literally I've been seeing that the numbers just don't work at those high rates right now for a lot of deals. But they're a good deal, and I know that they have value there. I just need to get a little lower rate, which I think a lot of people are seeing. So I'm working now, even though I don't want to do housing anymore, but I've been, especially lately, really reaching out and trying to find sellers of homes that will do seller financing on their homes, and I can take that debt then and substitute the collateral and use it to purchase a strip mall. And I think Greg will talk a little bit more about that. But I'm really looking for good debt as well. So, it's not just the strategy of looking for the asset that you can increase the value to. I'm looking for good debt, and it's become a really main focus of mine. So that's basically where I'm at right now. And any questions about my life? My husband's here. I don't see him, but that's Mike. He helped me a ton in the beginning with the house flips. We got a lot better. We sucked when we started, yeah. So, And he has a siding and roofing company, so if you need that done. Yeah, so.
You know what is so awesome about an evening like this evening is, first of all, we're in an unusual place. We tend to always funnel towards known, and when you get just slightly out of known, it gets more interesting. And so just the fact that it's here, it's not in some ballroom in some hotel near the airport, it's just it's a better environment to be real. This is more you than some bad carpet in some hotel. You know, this is your personality and the way you've set up all the food and drink. Let's give them a hand for setting this all up. Really awesome. It is nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to discuss the world of acquisition, finance, negotiation in a short block of time. And I've known that for my whole life, and so I have two objectives whenever I get together with anybody. First, I ask, well, why am I here? First and foremost, and really the reason I got up at 2:30 this morning and picked up Jorge and got to the airport and got to be here is just out of excitement to see Alexandra grow and her business grow and her influence grow and her footprint grow, because it makes me happy seeing a positive imprint in the world. That's number one. Number two is a standalone objective that's been with me for my whole life, talking to groups. And it's simply that it's my hope that when you leave, that you feel slightly off balance. You feel what I call wonderfully disturbed. And I don't know that I could even define that, but I hope that in our discussion, there's something in it that challenges you, that makes you think differently, that makes you go, I got to think about that more, right? That just takes you a little bit off balance so that you start looking at life and the possibilities of life slightly different. My history was, in a nutshell, was that I was raised by two very strong parents. They never had dads that they ever met. They were raised by crummy moms. So when they came together, they created their own game plan. Had two kids, my brother and I, and basically their objective was to create an independent kids that the night you graduate from high school, you're adults. And that was it. And it was more about teaching us to be competent than being friends or any of that kind of thing. They were there to do a job. And when you look up an adult in the family dictionary, it meant you don't live here. So the night you graduate from high school, you don't live here. And if you go to college, and we hope you do, good luck with that. We hope it works out for you. They were given nothing. They didn't plan on giving anything to us except their guidance and their care. And now you're an adult, and go do it. And my dad's, 6'4", 230 pounds. He played tight end in the Rose Bowl. He didn't say much, but he was serious about, this is it. This is a hard stop, and go do it. And so I went out looking for places to live by myself. I didn't want to live in a dorm. I didn't want to live in a fraternity. All that people stuff wasn't me. I needed quiet, right? I needed to be by myself. And so I went looking at houses to rent, and that led to an opportunity to buy, which I knew nothing about, this house that was an absolute dump. It was uninhabitable, but he sold it to me at $1,000 down. And my payment was $206.10 a month. And it closed the day after my 18th birthday, and I had from March till June when I graduated to get in and clean it up. And my first payment wasn't due till July with some deferred accrual of interest. And my first payment rolled around, and I was sitting there at my desk in my bedroom / laundry room, 10 by 10, and I'm writing out my first installment check, $206.10. And Jeff and Kelly popped their head in the door and said, hey, we're going to run around Green Lake. You want to go? And I said, no, I'm busy. They said, well, here's the rent. I don't ever remember negotiating rent with them, but they each threw a $100 bill on my desk right when I was writing $206.10. I didn't know what the term house hacking meant. I just was living in my house and they paid to live with me. But in that moment, I mean, that was a long time ago, but I swear every time I even think about it, I get goosebumps because it stopped my life right there. My heart started to race. I stood up. I kind of started to pace, but it was only 10 by 10 the room. You know, I'm like back and forth. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just like running in place. I didn't know what to do. And there was an instinct that I don't even know where it came from. But the best way I can describe it looking back, it's as if a limousine pulled up in front of my house. A guy opened the door and said, get in. I'll take you anywhere you want to go. To have success in this business, real success in this business, is rarely seen. It's rarely seen. I see a lot of left brain engineering type analysts that just analyze their life away and never do anything. And I see people that, oh my God, their people skills are so big, but if you ask them what a simple note and deed of trust is, they just think that's too technical. And therefore nothing gets done. There's no proposals that are written. And I see people that don't ever even venture into the unknown because their definition of possibility says it can't be done. And so they have self-limiting beliefs. You realize our hard drive is installed between ages 0 and 4. You know, this is when the world can or can't be done. And that hard drive, once it's installed, Dr. Seuss tells us, is very difficult to undo that. Once it's there, it's very difficult to undo it. We have to work hard to change our beliefs the older we get. And yet, if we don't change our beliefs, they don't transfer into possibility. There's no way to create intention unless we believe it's possible. And without intention, we won't see opportunity. And without opportunity, we don't have anything to work with our toolbox. Right? Do you see how it all works? But if we work hard on our belief system, the door of possibility is open. We create focused intention, which means I'm going to do this, period. This is what I want. That intention shows opportunities. Those opportunities allow us to use our trained toolbox, which gets results, and results automatically redefines our belief system. It's like an upgrade. Every time you get results, the world gets bigger and more possible. And that's how life should look. That's life. Upward and outward, every year, bigger and more possible and more able than the year before. Because we keep doing laps around the track. I remember thinking, can I move that toilet from here to here? I don't know. I've never done it. Right? I don't know. It seemed overwhelming. How is this done? And that's where I started, with that crappy house. The last house I built for my family took a little over 8 years and $8 million to build. If you can think it, it can be done. But do you know how many laps around the track I took to get from that house to this house? But every one builds on the other. And what you see is that crummy little first house that was overwhelming, and you're on the floor crying, and you're like, oh my God, what have I done? And psycho across the street, and you know, right? If you didn't take that lap, you wouldn't have got to the next lap. And the key is to move through the laps quickly, efficiently, debriefing everything that goes right, everything that goes wrong. I write 3/4 inch binder right there, just like a college brief, mandatory. Everything that really goes right, Write a 30-page brief on it. Pull it apart. Dissect it. Why did this work? Because you want to rinse and repeat. And everything that's ever gone really wrong, the wheels just fell off at high speeds. You know that kind of thing? Oh, debrief the shit out of that. Get out a 1-inch binder for that one. What happened? What did I do wrong? Where did arrogance get in the way? Where did I miss it? What went wrong? Because make it once, learn from it, and move on. But reference it. I have over 200 binders that I type myself in my life, and there's more coming this year. You never quit growing and learning and debriefing, right? But really the idea is that your belief system, your philosophy, keeps getting refined, which allows you then a door of possibility to create new intention. Does that make sense? Okay, so there's like an overview. The next thing, if we had 8 more minutes in life, I'd say, I want you to separate the dirt, sticks, and bricks from the finance. They're 2 independent offerings, analysis, deals in your mind. They don't have to stay married together. They're 2 independent things. And do I want to know the real estate? Oh my God, I want to know the real estate. I want to know everything about the real estate and the zoning, and the comprehensive plan, and what's here and what could be, and how do I maximize this property, and what can I do to make it more efficient, right? I want to know every detail of the property, all the sticks and bricks and zoning and everything around it. I can analyze that to death, and I want to make an intelligent proposal given what I'm buying in terms of real estate. But that alone is probably 40, maybe 35% of the deal. 60 to 65% of the deal is the deal structure. Because when we understand the deal structure, when we understand how to protect ourselves while serving the seller, we create a deal structure that can stand the test of time. About half the problems I see are people start projects and run out of time. And usually they've got an ugly clock ticking of high interest and short term and huge penalties and acceleration clauses and on and on and on. And it takes longer. You know, we could start a country western song, right? Has the project ever taken longer than you thought? Has it ever cost more than you thought? You see what I mean? It's like we know that that's how it goes. Well, give yourself the gift of time. First of all, give yourself the gift of being able to hold what you do. There have been 3 windows in 47 years I've been at this where you'd have to be an idiot not to sell real estate. 3 windows, like little 8-month windows. And you could see them coming. You could see days on market and acceleration clauses and 2 and 3 caps, and you could see things just where people are losing their mind. Like, that's when you want to sell, because you know how to buy and buy right. That's 3 little windows in 47 years. The rest of the time you want to hold and wait. And in order to hold and wait, your deal structure has to accommodate that kind of game plan. And people think that the only way to buy real estate is put 20, 30% down, go to a bank, get a loan, sign their adjustable rate note, you know, a 20, 25-year AM, 1.2, 1.3 debt coverage ratio, pay their fees. This is how you do it. I don't do it that way. I've never done it that way. And so there's a world of private financing that I can serve the lender while creating a deal structure that is reverse engineered around the project itself. Imagine the kind of time you would need if you were going to develop a piece of land and build it all out, right? People think, oh, I've got a 2-year loan. Good luck. Well, that's a problem. You've never developed land, I can tell. You see? I want at least 5 years to stabilization. And what would I like is more like 10 to 15, because this allows me to find the right kind of money to remove this money with new money, right? Deal structuring has to be sensitive to the goals and objectives of the person lending and fit the deal, especially multi-phase deal. And this is stuff you would all do yourself when you enter the world of syndication and partnerships and JVs. Now, the financing even more important. Really understanding that deal structure has to match the deal, right? But let's take a simple example. I'll just show you what I mean by this. Let's just say that I'm buying a house for $400,000. I could go to the bank and put $80,000 down and get a $320,000 loan and pay some fees and might get 5 to 7 years on adjustment. I may get a 30-year fix, may have prepayment penalties or not. That'd be a normal way of buying that house if I could qualify, right? And we've all seen that. It's a normal kind of loan. But imagine if I bought that house for $400,000 and I put 10% down, maybe less. I have the seller involved in financing for $360,000. The interest rate is more 3 to 5% in that range in this climate. Immediately when I say that, just that you're telling me there's a seller out there who would finance $360,000 at 3 to 5% in this climate. I can read your eyes and I can see that there's some very sophisticated people that say, that's just not out there. Now, hold that thought. Let's go all the way back to belief system. When you think it's not out there, you won't even look for it because you've deemed it not out there. I have students every single day of my life, and mine included, that see that deal out there. Every single day. I could show you my phone and go through several of them today. The terms of deals going on. So you see how belief system comes into the equation. Back to the deal. $360,000. Let's just pick a number, 4.5% interest. Payments or interest only or more, right? Initially, the collateral for that note might be a lien agreement, collateral agreement on the subject property, right? But let's say I didn't want this house. I didn't really want it. I'm just going to clean it up. I don't really want it. Then why the hell did I buy it? I want the debt. And you think, want the debt? What do you mean, want the debt? Well, I want that block of money. We've got a banker right here. If I gave you $360,000 and said, you have to pay me 4.5% interest every single month for the use of that money, you would take it and you would send it out the door at 7.5. You'd charge 2 points for it. You'd make it yield of 4 or 5. You'd be happy, right? That's exactly what banks do, right? I'm essentially starting the bank of me with this block of money. That's what I'm doing. It's the bank of me. This is my cost of funds. Banks make money 4 ways, right? They make money in margin, cost between their cost of funds and what they put it out the door. They make money in fees. They make money in penalties. They make money in servicing. I can make money in the same way that banks can make money. So I have this debt initially collateralized by the subject property. I clean it up. Now it's worth $450. I didn't make any big mark in the world. I turned it from $4 to $450, right? Big deal. I painted it. I mowed the lawn. Now I'm going to sell the house for $450 because they don't really want it. Here comes a new buyer. They love it. They do the normal thing. Here comes all new cash to me for $450. But I'm not going to pay off my $360,000 loan at 4.5%. I'm going to take that loan, release the lien on the property, collateralize that cash, put it in escrow, collateralized by cash. The note is collateralized by cash and escrow, sitting there waiting for new collateral. And now I've got a 10% down payment on my next $3.6 million purchase. Do you see? And I buy a $3.6 million mobile home park and collateralize the $360,000 cash that I just got out of the house by a second deed of trust on the mobile home park. That's called an upgrade. Lap 1 goes from a crappy house to a 100-pad mobile home park. you see how quickly we can get there? I haven't taken out any more money out of my pocket. I haven't done anything. I've simply substituted the collateral. Let's take another example. I'll just throw a few to see if you can follow me. $1,000,001 property. I put $1 million down. I put $100,000 down, $1 million note. Okay, the note is initially collateralized by the subject property. In this case, it's a sixplex. I go in, clean up the sixplex, get it operating, get it looking really good, great. But I don't necessarily want a little sixplex. Okay? I take the $1 million note because it has a substitution of collateral clause that I negotiated on it. It also has a slice and dice clause, which allows me to take the $1 million note and slice it up into multiple notes, adding up to $1 million. Any increments I want to, just so that the sliced up notes equal $1 million. It could be 10 $100,000 notes. It could be 20 $50,000 notes. It could be anything I want. Slice it up into smaller notes, each of the smaller notes carrying the same interest, the same everything as the mothership note used to, right? Now I can take those smaller notes to my portfolio and start filling gaps of leverageable equity, equity slots with cash flow in my portfolio, 100,000 here, 100,000 here, 100,000 here. I can distribute it across my portfolio. And when I'm done with that escrow, the subject property that I bought has no debt on it. It's free and clear now. I've relieved the debt of that property and spread out the debt across my own properties because that $1 million note in this case was 3.5% interest. No fee money due in 30 years. Interest only or more payments. With all the lettuce and tomatoes, substitution of security, slice and dice clause, first right of refusal clause, you name it, it's all in there. Do you see what I've just done? Now this $1 million property I paid 1.1 is free and clear. And I've cleaned it up and I've readied it, but I really don't want it either. So I sell it for 1.4. I've already redistributed the debt across my portfolio, so this now is my down payment on my next $14 million building. 10% down. Do you see it? Now we've gone from house to sixplex, and we're up into the $14 million category on my third deal. This is like a tiny little sliver of tools that when you really understand them, and you understand them not only from my perspective as a buyer of real estate, but from the seller's perspective on why would a seller do that? Why would a seller carry a note for $1 million with all these terms on it? Well, one big reason is capital gains. It's a deferral of capital gains. The installment sale is a deferral of capital gains. That's one reason. But there's multiple reasons that sellers prefer this way. They don't want to buy another property. They don't want to 1031 into another property. They went out of the property business and management business, and all of a sudden, here's a guy that has 6 kids. Great. Let's make 6 notes and have the initial collateral be different properties, and we're going to name remainder beneficiaries with every kid that you have because it's really not about you. You've got plenty of money. You want this to go to their kids. You see what I'm saying? Every situation has a different way of structuring the deal. And by the way, we're not even out of the dugout yet, much less to first base. But it gives you an idea, at least a glimmer of ideas. I funded one acquisition. I had 77 partners. You know that every single partner on that building invested in that building with their self-directed IRA funds. Every single one. It was a matter, do you want 1 share, 2 shares, or 3 shares? I mean, how many do you want? Most were all 1, a couple were 2. Great. That funded that deal. Self-directed IRA. No fixed interest. They had a share ownership in the property. Make sense? Deal structuring. I've put hundreds of hours together on how I think about real estate and the deal structures and the toolboxes. But I hope the influence that I have, and certainly, you know, your mentor, Rafiq, I got to train Rafiq from a very young age. And Julie, his daughter's there. And, you know, I mean, it's passing itself on. You're learning it, and Alexandra's learning it. It's more than just looking at real estate with value add. Or it's more than just building something from scratch that ends up having equity and cash flow. I built hundreds of units from dirt up. I don't care how they get put in service. Putting in service, having a net positive cash flow, that creates leverageable equity. Think about that. Just give me an example. Like, who has a property? Think of one single property that you have that has equity and net positive cash flow. Net equity, net positive cash flow. Raise your hand if you got one of those. Okay. Clint, Mitch, give me one just out of your head. One property, give me the amount of equity and net positive cash flow. Just no address. Yeah.
Okay, last year, paid $20,000, fixed it up, duplex, 14 on one side, 1,000 on the other. Took me a year to get done.
How much equity does it have right now?
Just got it appraised for 200 grand.
Okay.
And I had 80,000 into it.
Okay, so you got 120 of equity. What cash flow?
14 on one side, 1,000 on the other.
What's your net positive? Monthly cash flow.
Net positive?
Yeah.
Well, I paid cash.
Okay, you paid cash. So is that a net number? Take out all your expenses. What do you have?
120,000.
Okay, you owe 120,000.
No,
No,
I owe 80.
you owe.
To myself.
Okay, you paid cash for the whole thing. Well, you've got a free and clear property, so you've got 200,000 of equity and a big net monthly number. So somebody give me one with debt. Marlene, do you have one with debt? Net positive cash flow and equity.
Okay, one with debt is 2.7 debt. I bought it for 3.8.
Okay,
And one with cash flow is 323,000.
annual. Okay, so roughly 29,000 a month. 29,000 a month and 1.1 million of equity. Okay, those are the components of leverageable equity. How much cash flow? How much equity? Let's use an easier number. Let's make it so simple for us. Let's say you have a property with $400,000 of equity and $2,000 a month of net positive cash flow. Those are the components of leverageable equity. Here's what leverageable equity is. Listen carefully. The maximum amount I can borrow against a piece of real property, not to exceed either the net available equity, the net available positive cash flow. Can't exceed either. Either or. So if I've got 200,000 of equity, right, and $2,000 a month of cash flow in this example, right? If somebody offered me money at 12%, could I borrow 200,000? Could I? 12%.
Yeah.
12%, 200,000. What's my payment at 12%? 200,000. $2,000 a month, right? Interest only. Well, that's maximizing both the equity and the cash flow, right? But think about it. If I wanted to borrow 200,000, I paid 6%, that's $1,000 a month. I'm maxing my equity. I've got plenty of room to open the doors on my cash flow, right? I've only used 1,000 of my 2. I want you to think about your leverageable equity in a portfolio in terms of your next acquisition. If you've got a hold property that you've got in service and you're going to hold it, it's a great property, it's perfectly located, it's a sewing machine, that leverageable equity becomes your tool in your next acquisition. You're going to, in other words, I go out and buy property all the time I don't really want. I don't want it. Why am I buying it? Because I know that I could sell it tomorrow for cash for what I'm paying for it. That's rule 1. Number 2, I'm going to buy it on a note at 3% with a slice and dice clause, and the initial collateral is not going to be the subject property. The initial collateral is going to be the leverageable equity in my existing portfolio, my hold properties. Think of your portfolio like a chessboard. The back row, your kings and queens, that's your forever properties. Then their middle row is your cycle hold, the 7 to 10 year hold properties that you're waiting out the right time. And then there's a whole row, front row, that are pawns in the game. And what am I hunting for? Their real estate? No. I'm hunting for debt. I'm debt hunting there. I buy that front row only because of amazing terms. I want those notes to fill the gaps of leverageable equity in my back row and my middle row. Right? It's no fee, 3 and 4% money that I can fill those gaps. Now I sell the property without debt. I take that, and that represents a 10% down payment on my next hold property, or 3 or 4 more of these. Does that make sense? I know I'm moving pretty fast, but you know, that's what this evening is about. Now, I can do real estate and math and deal structuring. It's like air to me after all these years. I mean, I just breathe it. And I find that it's the easiest thing to teach. It may seem hard initially. It's like flying IFR. It feels hard at first, but pretty soon you got it. You're there. The math, the engineering can be taught. The bigger challenge is always in our belief system around what can or can't be done. And this is the door that's harder to open. And it's a door that doesn't just apply to our business, it applies to our life. It applies to everything we do. It applies to every turn in the road. What's possible? What can and can't be done? We will never go looking for what's impossible. It's impossible. Why would you look for it? But when that door of possibility opens, we can actually not only go off looking, we can create laser intention for what we're looking for. And we can reverse engineer our hunt after what it is we're looking for. It's why properties with a lot of equity and an existing cash flow draw me, right? Because that equity is like a whiteboard to create with. I get to create that equity. We all assume that everybody selling a property wants all cash. What a silly assumption. I've sat with so many attorneys and financial planners that go, listen, here's the thing. We don't want to pay a dime of tax, and therefore we can't have that much down. We're going to have exactly the amount down that we have in our closing costs and no more, so that all of this is from our basis to this number is all gain. We don't want any gain. We want to defer it indefinitely. We want to write out having never been paid a dime of principal. And it goes from capital gains now to an estate situation. That's exactly where we want it to be. Do you believe that that happens? It happens. And we can actually go looking for that scenario, and it opens the world of opportunity. So in our hunt, sure, we're looking for real estate. And we've learned a lot about looking for real estate. You know, it all starts with the building you bought. You want to work hard? Wow. Buy a crummy property in a small town and you know, and you're going to earn every dollar you'll ever collect. I literally have students that wear bulletproof vests, and I go, wow, you learned that not from me. I don't want to have to worry about my life when I go collecting rents. Or I don't want the call, what was the one, can I borrow foil?
Oh, yeah.
Right, we heard several
Do you have
scenarios
any
of
tinfoil I can borrow?
right, or would you help me fill out the application for unemployment because I don't know how to fill it out? Like, oh yeah, let me get right on that. I'm gonna get, you know, you get that when you buy when you buy properties that's in the wrong location, that doesn't have demand. I'm not a sprawl guy. I'm an infill guy. I'm a guy that goes to known areas of demand, and I'm going to go there and buy real estate. And if everybody says nobody would sell you real estate in that area, it's just too much in demand, my tail starts wagging because that's where I want to own it. Do you realize that all I got to do is put that property under contract, and I've got 100 options in front of me because everybody wants what I have, right? How badly do you want what you want? Have you identified what you want? I've written people handwritten letters every quarter for 15 years, and they don't return my call or write me back or anything. But you know what one guy did? He met with his estate attorney before he even died. And he said, when I die, you're going to get this property appraised. And when you get it appraised, here's a stack of letters I've got from this guy. I've saved every one. He really wants this property, and I want you to give him the first call. And if you know Seattle, that's 128 feet of waterfront on Lake Union, looking west, right across Lake Union. It's the only apartment building on the waterfront with its own boat slips. It's the only apartment on the waterfront. 15 years of writing that guy letters. He never called me, and he died. But he made provision before he died to hand these letters to his estate attorney, and I got the call. Let me tell you something about that call. The best opportunity you will ever get, if you're looking for it, if you're putting yourself in position for it, that best call will always come at the worst time. It's not, see, you laugh because you know it's true. You laugh because you go, boy, is that true? Well, listen, if I were to pick up this can and let go of it, what's going to happen? It's going to go bam. If I did it again, it's going to go bam. Wow, twice in a row. At 9,000 times in a row, it's not serendipity. There's a principle. It's not just a fluke that it happens to everybody. Providence is seeing what you're made of right then, right there. It's a philosophical test. Because this kind of amazing opportunity should only go to somebody that is philosophically sound, that has the ability to go, this is the worst time. Of course this call's going to come today, this hour, this minute. Of course it is. And you're ready for it. Courage, action in spite of fear, right? Isn't that what divides the world? You get the feeling that this introvert could go on and on about the one thing I think I know about. And why do I do it? Well, because I've never had a job. This is all I've ever done. And nobody's ever handed me a dollar in any other capacity than me doing my own thing. And I'm such a proponent in a world that we live in a Costco environment. It's a great big funnel saying, do it this way, go get a job, do it this. This is all these little ants on an anthill for somebody else. And I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in setting your own course. I believe in saying, this is what I want to do and I'm going after it. I'm going after it and I don't give a shit where everybody else is going. This is what I'm doing. My furniture is not going to come from IKEA. I'm not going to live in a split level house in a cul-de-sac. I'm doing it my own way. I believe in that so much so that you'll feel real alone if you're the only guy that thinks that. You know, I don't drive a Ford Taurus. I drive a 69 Ford Bronco, right? And it doesn't have air conditioning. You roll down the windows. Be an original. Do it your own way. Create your own beliefs, your own philosophy, and become competent. I mean mastery competent. I mean, you know, Dave got in that beautiful Bonanza and flew here from Cleveland today. He's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to not only do it, but to teach it. And to not just fly little single engines like this, to fly jets around. That's what he does. That's competence. Be a master at what you're doing. Know it better than anyone else. The world's your oyster when you're alone in your own world doing your own thing. And that's the good stuff. That's the good stuff. I'll leave with a story because it's one that I hope you'll remember. My dad, that big guy, that quiet guy that doesn't say 10 words all year, right? It was a big day when I could go elk hunting with him. And we're not in California, so I can talk elk hunting. And I was 8 years old. I didn't have a rifle, but I was able to go with him. And I hear all these stories of the elk tent and going elk hunting. And oh my God, my eyes are this big. And I get to go with Dad elk hunting. And it all went like he said, you know. We set up the wall tent in the snow. And we're out in the middle of nowhere. And the way you do it is you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You have some breakfast and coffee. And even if you don't drink coffee, you better drink coffee because it's colder than hell out there. and you pack your little pack and you head out. Well, his strides were like 2.5 times mine. And so here we are at 3 a.m, and I'm behind him, running behind him in the snow, and we're cutting the side hill of this canyon, and evidently the elk live like 6 miles out that way, and we got to be there about 6:30 when it gets light, you know? And so we're hustling, and we're cutting across this canyon on a steep slope, and the wind is coming up this canyon, and it's frozen rain, like little ice BBs hitting the side of your face at 30, 40 mile an hour winds, just pelting you. And I'm running behind him, and you know, it's just pounding your face. And I've got my little headlamp on, and I'm trying to stay in his steps because it's easier, but they're so big, you know, and I'm just running to keep up. And right in the middle of this wind tunnel, I mean, it couldn't be a more windy spot, he stops, and he turns around, and he gets down on one knee, and he goes, "Gregor, come here." And I come running up, and he goes, "Gregor." Pitch black out, wind. He says, "You see anybody?" I said, "No, Dad, I don't see anybody." He gets this big smile on his face. He says, "That's because no one's here." No one. You know why no one's here? It's too damn hard to be here. He goes, "Greg, learn to love what most people won't tolerate. The world is yours. If you can learn to love," I don't mean tolerate it, love it. He goes, "It doesn't get any better than this. This is the good stuff right here." He had tears of joy coming down his face, and I was watching him freeze to his face. I'm not kidding you. He goes, "Let's go get that damn elk." And he got him, started walking. I've never in my life seen my dad so happy. I hear those words several times a year, where it's 2:00 in the morning and you're still on the job site and nobody's there. And you don't have self-perception. And you go, "What the hell?" And then hey, this is the good stuff. Mm-hmm. When you're borderline lost, but some people call that an adventure. I've been lost my whole life on purpose. Learn to love that. Learn to live a deliberate life. Like this hangar. Like the plane that's coming in. Like the adventure of thunderstorms right in front of you and crazy stuff that most people only talk about. They don't sit there and go, "Wow, I think we better turn around and go that way." In the dark, because that's a funnel right there. Maybe that way would be better.
He's not telling the story very well.
This is what it's about. And when you can grab that kind of philosophy, and that kind of heart, and that kind of intention, it's not all going to go right, but you're prepared because you love those things that most people cave at. You don't cave. You get a smile on your face, go, "Now we're having a party." Probably one more thing's going to come right through the door right now, and sure as hell it doesn't. You go, "Welcome, come on in. I was expecting you." About right now. Do you see how you get to frame? You get to say what happens next. You get to carve it out the way you want to, because ultimately it's your life, it's your impact, it's your legacy. And if you don't think people are watching, people are watching. People are watching. I've got 7 kids. Man, they're all watching. Grandkids, they're watching. Thousands of students in this country. If I chicken out, they chicken out. Lean in, don't chicken out. She's not chickening out. Jake isn't chickening out. There's a lot of power players in this room. They've heard me talk for way too long, right? Matter of fact, raise your hand if you've been to power players. Yeah, see. By the way, we're getting a picture in here, power players, before we leave, because it's something I do everywhere I go. I just want to know who I've gotten to know that close because it's an intensive. And so anyway, I appreciate you willing to be here, first and foremost, to support this journey. There are a lot of people saying, man, I don't have the time, I don't have the expertise. Does that mean you can't be involved? Of course you can be involved. You know, not everybody's going to be up there flying the plane, but the plane takes a lot of people, right? The plane gets a lot of people there. And when I see a competent pilot, believe me, I'm all there to support that kind of pilot because she's doing it right, Jake's doing it right, they're just doing it right. They were raised right. They were really raised right. You're raised right. I don't even know you, but I guarantee you're raised right. Yeah, yeah. Okay. We wanted to leave a little bit of time at the end for any questions that you might have. And we also wanted to leave plenty of time so that people could eat the rest of the food and get more to drink and hang out. Any questions that you guys have? Yeah.
If you've got a property, so I've got a duplex I bought 10 years ago, FHA, ton of equity in it. Can you slice and dice? Can you do anything with, I've got 3.25, 30-year, beautiful.
You have an underlying FHA loan?
Yeah.
No, you've got an FHA loan. You've got a bank loan. It's not going to get sliced up at all. Yeah. Can you use your leverageable equity? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, if you've got equity and cash flow, that equity and cash flow, that's leverageable equity. That can be used in your acquisition of other properties to come if you wanted to hold that and encumber that leverageable equity and free up maybe something you don't even want, right? But as far as slicing and dicing an underlying conventional note, no, it all has to be negotiated when you negotiate the terms of the note, right? And the terms of the collateral agreement. We do all of that on the buy side, the negotiation of those terms. Mm-hmm.
So I could use the equity I have, get private money, go buy something else with slice and dice, and then do it.
You can use your leverageable equity because think of your leverageable equity as a garage for money. It's got equity, it's got cash flow. You want to leave a little room in that garage of money to open the doors, front and back, right? But you can use that capital, right, to buy more real estate. Now, I would also argue you can use that capital in the buying of other real estate. Let's say you have a $50,000 equity position and $300 a month. Well, I can go write $50,000 of debt on this deal where the owner is involved in the financing at 3%, right? I can take that, and the initial collateral isn't the subject property. The initial collateral is your leverageable equity in that duplex. And by the way, just to sort of at least get out of the dugout and go to first base, can I have an agreement with somebody with a whole bunch of leverageable equity to rent their equity? Of course I can rent their equity. Let's just start thinking about it. What is it? I'm renting a collateral space. I can rent the equity space to collateralize a note, right? And again, there's no point in getting into first base and second base someplace like this, but you know, I could say, how do I buy a house for $400,000, sell the exact same house for $400,000, and make $150,000? And you'd think it's a circus act. It's not a circus act. It's understanding finance, right? How do I borrow money against a property I already sold 5 years ago? How do you do that? There's lots of ways to do that. There's ways to do that. I can insert a subordination agreement and turn that property into a future wrap note. If I've sold it on an installment sale, that's like borrowing against my receivable, right? They owe me $1 million. I've got $1 million note. Well, I'm going to insert a subordination agreement so I could borrow anything under $1 million, collateralize it with the property. Now they pay me, I pay my note. It's just like turning it into a future wrap note. I mean, we could sit here for hours, days. That's a commercial instrument multi-engine jet rating. That's what that is. How many hours do you have, roughly?
10,000.
Yeah, 10,000 hours. You kind of know how to fly a plane when you got 10,000 hours. You see what I mean? So, but there's no point in that this evening. What I'm trying to do is to say, there's a world out there. And she's an example of how quickly you can go from here to something very, very different when you set your intention, when you check yourself in for the right kind of schooling, when you have people around you that have done this before, right? I mean, you're in control of all that. Yeah, Les?
So I've got a case.
Any case-by-case thing, big questions, general questions.
That's a big question.
Okay, good.
So I've got several single-family houses.
Mm-hmm.
They've got plenty of equities in them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have spring market here. It's all seasonal. I would love to wait until spring comes, but how can I use at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for strip centers,
Mm-hmm.
say in here and parts of Illinois.
Do the single-family houses have leverageable equity?
They do.
Cash flow and equity?
No cash flow.
Then you don't fit the bill.
They were
If
flips in progress.
right, okay, but again,
We can.
if you
make it
rented
so-
them out and you've got a pro forma of income stream that creates net positive cash flow and equity, that becomes leverageable equity. If you've got a house sitting vacant, it has no cash flow,
you have
right?
to-
Or if it's a project you're intending to flip, it has no cash flow. It's why raw land has to be really deal structured, really carefully, very carefully. It's why options become a big tool. It's why closings with huge deferred interest payments, etc.
Even if you have ton of equity.
Ton of
cash
equity.
flow,
There's nothing more common than portfolios with a lot of equity and no cash flow. That's almost a useless portfolio.
got it.
Which is why hold has to be your engineering. Hold is how you survive in this business. Yes, please.
So you said like there's been 3 periods of time that you were like you would be a fool if you didn't sell.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that right now, or is that not right now? 'Cause am I
It
a
was.
fool? Like, I
Yeah. Now is not a time to sell.
okay.
No.
just
Still
ended.
just
No.
left.
No.
That just period.
And you'll see climates where again you'll watch cap rates go down in the I sold a property in Seattle at a 2.2 cap. Really? I mean, when are we ever going to see that again? I mean, that's absolutely insane, right? And it had no expandability. It was running like a well-oiled machine. There was nothing else. You weren't going to get 1 more mile an hour out of that thing, right? So it's not like there was a bunch of expandability left on the table or things you could do. It was maximized. But still, there are buyers that just want to get in the game. I don't know. That's silly. We make our money and we set the future up with the deal structure and the terms of our acquisition. And I hear all the time, oh, well, it just can't be done this, can't be done that. And I'm telling you, that's a belief system thing. Because it's just not true. Just for fun, just humor me. Name any major city in the country. Doesn't matter, other than where we are. Huh? Chicago. Great one. Ryan McIntyre in Chicago. Jim Marinovich in Chicago. Own Hyde Park, Chicago, income producing property in Chicago. Beds for Meds started in Chicago, right there at Northwestern University. These guys are like my kids, right? And the point I'm making is that these tools work in the very best areas of the world. I was in Manhattan with Faria, 2 months ago, right in, Upper East Side. How do you deal structure something in New York City, one of the most high demand pieces of real estate in the world? Are there terms there? Yes, there's terms there. There are people there that have economic issues that need this kind of deal structuring. And so, of course, how you engineer something is always from the benefit to the seller perspective. No seller has ever said, now, Greg, before we close, have you got all the clauses you need to make this a great deal for you? Nobody's ever said that. You need to know how to frame your proposition so that it makes sense from the seller's perspective. Given all of the ever-changing climates, ever-changing tax laws, ever-changing everything, right?
Can I add something to this too?
Please, yes.
So when I first heard all of this, I imagined that it would be a lot easier to get mom and pop and single family homeowners to agree to these sort of terms, right? And then I remember I was driving to try to negotiate a strip mall, and I had a coaching call with Greg, and I was so nervous because he was like, ask them for the terms, ask them for substitution of security, slice and dice, all of it. And when I explained it to this owner of the mall, he was like, wait, what? Because he has built a portfolio himself. He understands creative financing. This was new to him, but he was so excited to have another tool himself. It was the easiest yes I ever got. So it's not just for some reason I had in my head, it was just these small single family deals where I could get something like this to happen.
Right.
Not at all the case.
Right. Some naive person that doesn't know anything,
Yes.
I'll just sign anything. No, get that out of your head. Get that out of your head. The educated seller that knows basis, that knows tax ramifications, that knows estate planning, et cetera, there's a much easier client to talk to about this because they're educated. They have attorneys, they have financial planners. So this is back to belief system. If you don't believe this, you won't try it, which maybe puts some value in coaching because I'm always pushing for, okay, what kind of equity do they have? I want to use that equity. I want them to lend that equity if it's a seller. But don't limit your thinking to just a seller financing the transaction. Think private money. Do you realize that this entire world in the last decade has lost 20% of their retirement plan tied to normal markets? Think about that. Tied to their blended mutual fund, right? And they sit there with ulcers watching red arrows on CNN, right? And Bloomberg going, There's a world also that puts money in normal banks at 2 to 4%. CDs, bonds, money market accounts, billions of dollars sitting there. Okay, take those two realities and blend them and present something that says, how about this? How about an excellent piece of collateral that if I got hit by a bread truck, the property still pays you? It's under excellent management. You get a check auto deposit first of the month to you or your self-directed IRA, and it's going to be at between 5 and 6% every single month. You can plan your life, you can plan your income stream, you can plan your retirement. You don't need to worry about anything. It's just going to happen. Tell me there isn't a client for that out there. They're everywhere. Proven by them walking into banks saying, okay, here's another. I was sitting at Washington Mutual in Arizona about 2 months ago, and this lady walked in, and you know how they have the desk right next to where you work with the teller? The desk, where you want to sit down and do business, you go to the desk. And I'm sitting there waiting for a cashier's check, and this lady walks in, sits down at the desk, and the lady goes, how can I help you? Well, I'd like to buy another CD. Oh, great. Yeah, we've got this one, this one, this one. Yeah, I'd like this one. And well, how much would you like to invest? Oh, just $200,000. And I'm sitting there this far away listening and looking at her at a 3.375 or whatever it was going. I felt like, is it wrong of me to say, would you like to take a walk out to the parking lot?
They might not give you a cashier's check then, though.
They might not have. I might have had to pay for the cashier's check. Right. It happens. So this is why I think it's so easy that we can change our belief system around this, which changes our next thing we do, the next call we make, the next proposition we ask. It's that simple. And I've got 100 ways of convincing you of that in visual, kinesthetic, hands-on ways that will show you that if you simply ask for something, people will give it to you, even if you can't give them anything in return. I'll prove that to you. And once you've seen that, you can't unring the bell. And now you've become a little more bold, and you go out there in the world and go, all right, I'm going to ask for this. I'm going to really go up against attorneys in a conference room and a seller and a couple accountants and go, I'm going to hold my own. Have you ever been in that room with attorneys and all these guys and going, so you're going to tell me that this substitution of security clause is a little scary and you're going to hold that line on behalf of your client? Oh yeah, it really bothers me. Okay, so, but everything else about this deal looks fine, right? Oh yeah. Okay, so we have the initial collateral of the subject property, but you don't want me to move the collateral. Are we clear? We're clear. Okay, so we're all signed off on that. Let's sign off on that. Let's go that far. We get all signed off. I go, now, before we leave the room, I want you to explain something to your client. When I sell this property 3 days from now and they get cashed out, we've already got a signed deal here. There's no prepayment penalty. I can pay them off tomorrow if I want to. You realize that, right? You just signed off on it right here. Signed deal. You know what's going to happen? They're going to be writing a check for $250,000 to the IRS. Have you explained that to them? Have you guys explained that to them? I'll give you a minute if you want to explain that to them. And the seller goes, what do you mean? What's that all about? However, if I were to substitute the collateral and the terms of the note stay intact and keep moving forward, and I'm paying them interest only every month, it continually defers the tax obligation. Wouldn't that be better for your client? I'm just saying. Pay the tax or not? Are you confident enough to sit in that conference room and hold your own? I don't expect anybody to start there. But when you really understand this and you really believe in the value you're giving people and you really see the alternatives out there that they have and that none of them are performing well for them, and you know you are, you see you can hold your own. And you present it that way. Okay? Competence. No shortcut. That toolbox part, you got to really want to know it. I have a card, and Alexandra has a card that we would like you to fill out. Clint and Mitch are going to hand you 2 cards and a pen, and it simply asks this question. Because we can't cover nearly enough tonight, all we can do is what we've done. And we've got food and we've got drink, and we want to give you time together. But the value of something like this comes in our willingness to have a direct one-on-one conversation with you about where you're at and where you want to go. And if you don't want that phone call, just don't fill anything out. Because the last thing I want to do or she wants to do is take time to make a phone call that you don't want. Matter of fact, that's the last thing I want to do. I got plenty of calls that I want to make that want me to call them. So if you want a call from me, if you want a call from Alexandra, all you got to do is check a box and give a best time and we'll call you. We will follow up. There's 2 cards. Fill them out quick. Hand them in. You can just put them right here when you're done. And we will call you if you want us to call you. Question. Go ahead. No? Oh, I saw somebody's hand go up there. Any more questions while you guys are filling this out? Yeah. Hey, you guys got to stay quiet and fill these out so I can hear. Go ahead.
Where's your first trip on the new plane? Well, the plane, we're closing next week, so probably to a property. I don't know. Why, you want to come? Hoping somewhere exciting. No, probably not.
You should have had a big picture of the plane here somewhere.
I actually was thinking that.
Yeah.
It's a Piper Cherokee. It's really cool. Like a little older one. Yep.
What is the best thing you've done on this journey?
On real estate
Did you
journey?
guys hear this question? I want you to hear the answer to it.
So the best thing I've done on this journey, well, I think the thing that is shifting my focus from thinking that I could only do little things because I was a little girl to like, you tell me I can buy something and I'll buy it and I'm not scared of it anymore. So I think having the right team around me and the right people guiding me, and I don't think that there's anything that I couldn't eventually get to. So switching my mindset. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember you told us when you just didn't have a job anymore, but you really wanted to invest.
Yep.
And then suddenly Rafik came with his big portfolio.
Yep.
When do you think you would be able to, or are you there already that you can now fund yourself?
I don't work. I do a ton myself. Yeah. And with my brother, I'm very financeable now. Yeah.
Very good. So that's financially free then.
Yeah, and seller financing on this too. Yeah. Yeah. But it was great to start off, it was amazing.
Absolutely.
Yep.
In 4 years, that's an achievement.
Yeah.
That's an achievement.
Yeah.
That's a huge achievement. It's a huge achievement.
So.
Yeah. I wish I could bottle Alexandra's drive, her work ethic, her orientation in terms of doing multiple things all en route from here to there. She's incredibly organized and efficient about what she gets done in a day, and always on time, and always respectful, and always prepared. I mean, if I could bottle that and just say, here, take this pill, that sets her apart like I can't even tell you from people who are even serious about this. It's on task. It's making lists and getting things done and just working through it. And if you don't like to do it anyway and just move through it. The world's your oyster, right? I mean, there's a lot of young people watching you going, how are you doing this? But with that comes an obligation to be that kind of example. So. And
there's a lot of people who I talk with that are older that are so excited that I am doing this, that they're excited to work with me and they want me to succeed.
Oh man.
It's a huge gift, actually.
Yeah.
So everyone else should be lazy, and then a few of us could do really well.
Some of the best clients that you'll ever buy from are people that are really well off, but they know how they got there. They know what it took to get them there. And when they see ethics, when they see honesty, when they see drive, when they see competence, I mean, I have mine in my head. I think of Larry Ballou, right? And I sat down and I bought a 38 unit from him, and I knew. I'd done my research. I knew what he owned. And I thought, well, here it is. I'm going to over-deliver. That's what I try to always do, but man, I'm going to over-deliver with Larry. And so I did. I bought that 38 unit. I did what I want to do, and I went to sell it. It didn't have a substitution of security clause on it. Larry didn't particularly want to be cashed out, but he's being cashed out. I sold the building. And he gave me a call. This is like a year after I bought the building, and he said, hey, Greg, I see you sold the Melbourne. I said, yeah, Larry, I did. He said, yeah, I got my check, yeah. He says, it looks like I left a little chicken on the bone. And I said, well, yeah, I worked pretty hard for that chicken, Larry, but yeah, I did fine. Good for you, yeah. He says, you ready for the next one? And I said, you bet. He says, well, why don't I meet you at the Bel Air? I'm sure you've done your research. You know where the Bel Air is? I said, I sure do, Larry. And see you there in 15 minutes? I said, you bet. I bought 43 buildings from Larry over the course of 4 years. And everyone, why would he want to call anyone else? Why would somebody who sells you a building ever call anyone else? Because you're a proven entity. You've always done what you said you're going to do. You're on it. You're on top of it. The details matter. All of what you say you're going to do is done so professionally and right. Why would they want to go explore something else? They're already off on their next thing. You're the young kid on the horse. They just want to say, do it. Thanks, next. I'll call you when we're ready for the next one. Thank you so much. And you stay in good touch, and you over-deliver, and you get to know their currency, and you invest in them, and they throw you the whole portfolio. Because why would they do it any other way? You really want to go out and take a risk on a stranger when there's a proven entity right here? And they're not greedy. They've already made their money. They just don't want the work of what it's going to take to get it to that next level. So they just go, here, you do it. I know there's chicken on the bone. I know you could manage it better. I know the rents are low. I know this. I know that. But I don't want to work hard anymore. I want to do other things. And I want to watch you do it. And you've got all the energy that I used to have. I've heard that so many times. So we tend to think that, oh, there's only a great deal if somebody's on some adversity list. You know, the pre-foreclosure, the bankruptcy, the dying, the divorce, blah, 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 blah. I bought one pre-foreclosure property in 47 years, and it happened that it was an assemblage of properties and it stuck right in the middle of 5 that I already owned. And that just happened to be where they were at. I've never looked at an adversity list, a pre-foreclosure list, an NOD list, any of those lists. I hunt by location, by zoning, by expandability in terms of real estate. And then I go in and deal structure finance. That's the way to do it, in my opinion. Okay, well, maybe we'll get to talk. Fill out your cards. There's a stool here before you leave. You should have 2 cards. Put them both on this stool and enjoy your time getting to know each other, compare some notes, have some food, some drink. Sound good?
Have a bunch of food, a bunch of drinks. I want to bring it home.
Thanks, you guys.